Let's talk about one of the most underrated JRPGs these days, the Legend of Heroes Trail of Cold Steel series. The series has been gaining popularity in just last year, with many raving about just how good the Trails games are. If you like JRPGs that have that anime feel, you can form confident links with your classmates to get closer, have several waifus to date,
Would you dance with me? Sorry, I'll get out now.
You don't have to apologize, Reen.
and has some of the best character development and world building in this generation of JRPGs, then I'm sure that this game will be up your alley. Just from the intro, the game has a Persona feel to it, but also retains its own style and charm at the same time. And let me tell you, after playing the game, it's an epic ride. The series is both underrated and a great JRPG series. But you know, I wish I can tell you I was one of those JRPG fans that always knew about the franchise, but I actually only found out about it 3 months ago. My Trails journey started as soon as I beat Final Fantasy VII Remake and Persona 5 Royal, two excellent JRPGs released in 2020. So I was craving for another JRPG that had Persona vibes. So I literally typed in one day, JRPGs that's like Persona, on Google to see if there was any JRPG gems I missed, and as luck would have it, I did. From my search results, many comments recommended that I had to play the Trails of Cold Steel games. That if I was a true JRPGer, I gotta at least check out the series. So I followed their advice and bought the first Trail of Cold Steel game to see if the series met the hype, because 200 hours later, I binged the first 3 Trails games to completion. To me, it definitely met that hype. But the game did admittedly get some time to get used to, compared to the newer, more sleek JRPGs of this generation. From here, I'll break down what makes the series so good and why this could be the next breakout JRPG. So the Trail of Cold Steel games throws it back to high school and will have similar vibes to the Persona games I talked about in the beginning. The series does the high school theme so well and immerses you in the school, its teachers, and of course, its classmates. The game starts off with everyone first arriving at Thor's military academy. The main protagonist, Reen Schwarzer, is lumped into a new experimental class called Class 7, a 9-person class that combines both nobles and commoners together. And from the start, you immediately feel disdain and disgust between the nobles and commoners.
Do you expect me to be impressed? Your family lineage means nothing to me. I'll never bend my knee to the likes of...
Class 7 would see if nobles and commoners could actually work as one. And this nobles and commoner divide is very important, as you'll see it throughout the entire Trails games. One of the immediate aspects that caught my eye were the game's setting, where it takes place. The game blends fantasy with real-life technology, so you see magic, staves, and swords alongside more modern technology like guns, cars, airships, and tanks. Think of this game's world that went through its own industrial revolution and is now experiencing 21st century technology. Okay, so how about that story? I got you. The story starts off as Class 7 attending school as normal high school students. You'll balance your free time using the calendar system, taking tests, and forming confidant links or social links. Every month, the students explore an old abandoned building called the Old Storehouse, which is a mysterious building on the school campus that has monsters in it and keeps changing every month for reasons unknown. And you'll find out more about this old storehouse as the story progresses. Each month, the students of Class 7 will attend field studies, which is my favorite part of the game, where you get to leave the high school campus and stay in a different city for a couple days. It's like one of those field trips you took during school. This is where you get to learn about the game's kingdom called Erebonia. You'll discover Erebonia's many cities, learn about each city's lore, and see what's going on across the kingdom. And you'll soon learn that the story isn't just a happy stroll with 9 high school students going to school.
Cats? No, dogs. They're like dogs.
Your family's army employs monsters like this?
No one ever told me.
You'll later learn about Erebonia's politics and different factions and how they hide a deep dark secret as to what's really going on. And when you start to slowly discover what's actually going on, you'll want to keep playing, because in the Trails games, once the plot gets going, it gets crazy very fast and it will keep you on your toes. I like how the Trails games start off with normal everyday high school students, but later on weaves a greater narrative going on behind the scenes and how the story slowly moves towards that narrative. While playing through the series, the Trails games will slow roll its grand story and have no apologies for doing so. If you thought JRPGs like Persona 4 Golden or Dragon Quest XI took their sweet time, Trails of Cold Steel takes it to a whole new level. The game takes 10 hours to really get going, as the game slowly introduces you to its characters and its world. But I didn't mind, as the Trails game stories got increasingly better as time went on, and because of the turbo or high speed option. And thank God that the developers added the turbo high speed option in the updated releases, as it makes the game's slow sections a lot faster. This option is such a great feature that it should be added in future JRPGs just to speed things up. So after getting past that slow start, I found myself in for the game's long journey. And by long journey, it took me about 65 hours to complete the first Trail of Cold Steels, doing many of the game's side quests. By the end of Trails 1, its incredible ending will definitely leave you shocked and wanting more. Through it all, I'm glad I never put the controller down and I kept playing through the past few hours, as I eventually got sucked into the series. And I wouldn't be putting down that controller after the first game, because I would soon find out there's actually 4 Trail of Cold Steel games and 10 games in the larger Legend of Heroes franchise. Back when Nihon Falcom created the Legend of Heroes franchise, they had a vision of creating a long-spanning JRPG series that would build upon one another. Think Lord of the Rings or the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So they envisioned a series that would be broken up into separate arcs, much like how the Marvel movies are, which each arc taking place in a different empire and having their own cast of characters. These characters from previous games will meet up with others in future games and band together, really resembling the Avengers of JRPGs. And the series that would be spawned from all this would be called the Legend of Heroes. As mentioned earlier, there's 10 games in the Legend of Heroes franchise, the 4 Trails of Cold Steel games actually being the 6th through 9th entries in the game. The Legend of Heroes series is also a continuous series, meaning that the games are connected and best played in order. Unlike JRPGs like Persona or Final Fantasy, where you can jump into any game as a newcomer since each story is independent of one another, the Legend of Heroes games are all connected. So you may be asking, if the first Trails of Cold Steel game starts from the 6th game, can I even start here? My personal take? Yes. Now I know I'm gonna get some heat from the hardcore Legend of Heroes fans that say you have to start from the very first game, called Trail of the Skies, and play the entire series from there. And I get why these fans would say this. As I mentioned earlier, each game builds upon the previous game and has a ton of references. But I'm gonna drop a bomb. I actually started with the first Trail of Cold Steel game. Then I later backtracked to the other games after. The most appealing reasons to start with the Trails games? It's the most modern of the franchise thus far, has voice acted lines, and has quality of life improvements that are lacking in the much older games originally released in the mid to late 2000s. And while I didn't understand some of the Easter eggs and characters that the Trails games were referring to, I never felt totally lost in the story. The story gave me enough info for me to understand what was going on, and any characters I didn't know, I would briefly look up. And I think Falcom agrees with me here, as they also thought that players can start from here, fresh, brand new into the Trails of Cold Steel arc, as I felt the company made this a starting point for new players to get into the game. And we can't forget about real life. The Legend of Heroes series is an awesome series, but the slog through 10 games from the beginning. That's at least a good 600 hours for the entire series, if not more. And let's get real, not everyone has that time. So my take again is yes, you can start with Trails of Cold Steel 1, but if you do have the time and are interested, it's highly recommended to play the other Legend of Heroes games after finishing the Trails series. By playing the other Legend of Heroes games, you'll be treated to some of the best games in the series and arguably some of the best JRPGs that you'll ever play. You'll learn more about the surrounding kingdoms and fully understand the big picture in the entire series. If you're like me and you like your JRPGs with meat and hours to sink into, the Trails games has your back. The Trails games are known in the JRPG community for being very long, with each game ranging anywhere from 70 hours minimum to over 100 hours if you do all the side quests. Now I know some people may be skeptical when they toss words like longest JRPG, but the Trails games has to be up there. I mean, the game's dialogue is immense in word length, as the third Trails of Cold Steel game alone clocked in at just over 1.1 million words. That just blows my mind and shows just how insanely long each game is. Now to put this in perspective, most plays are about 5,000 to 10,000 words, movie scripts are estimated to be at 7,500 to 20,000 words, and books around 80,000 to 150,000 words, with the popular Lord of the Rings trilogy clocking in at 473,000 words. Now comparing this to lengthy video games, The Witcher 3 has a 450,000 word script, Dragon Age Origins has 740,000 words, and Danganronpa V3 Killing Harmony has just around over 977,000 words. Trails of Cold Steel 3's series' 1.1 million words is 2.5 times more than The Witcher 3 and the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy, and is known to be one of the most lengthy games in video game localization history. These hefty scripts are the biggest reason why each Trails game has an average of 2 years between Japan's initial release and the Western release. For example, the 9th entry of the Legend of Heroes series, Trail of Cold Steel 4, was already released in Japan on September 27, 2018. Its US release, however, is just over 2 years later on October 27, 2020. In fact, Japan is already on the 10th entry, Hajimari no Kiseki, released on August 27, 2020, with a predicted Western release either in late 2021 or in 2022. Moving on to the game's appeal to a larger non-anime crowd, one of the questions some people might have when playing an anime-styled game is this game too dweeby or anime for me? It's a question that many Western gamers have, as they're more used to Western-styled RPGs and may not be anime fans. And the answer is, yes, there's some. The game does have its fair share of anime moments, such as the bad guy getting away so easily, stereotypical characters at first, and usual other tropes. But as the game goes on, I was surprised how in-depth the story and characters are. A lot of the characters have deeper motives and are multifaceted. One character might be a high noble, but is the black sheep of his family, and his wealthy lineage hides much bigger problems within his family. Another character hates nobles with the passion at the start of the game, but has some relatable reasons why he holds this hatred. The game does go out of its way to distance itself from the tropey anime stuff, and I think that's a good thing. The tropes gradually fall off the wayside, and the story and world building soon overshadow any of the remaining anime cliches the further you get into the game. As with any good JRPG, they have their fair share of bangers. This series is no different. The songs in the series are very well done and memorable. Many of the songs will be stuck in your head well after you beat the game, as the series has some awesome bangers. When your after-school music is this, you know that your ears are in for a treat. The after-school theme really has this persona or Tokyo Xanadu feel that it's relaxing, funky, and a bit city pop to me. The songs range anywhere from the chill night theme when all the students are unwinding from class, to the energy-pumping combat music. The music flows very well for each scene and are serious bops. But fans of the series aren't the only ones impressed with its music. Adam Neely, a popular musician and YouTuber, liked the game's music so much that he gave tribute to the Trails of Cold Steel's after-school song during a video game concert.
Nobody in the audience is going to know this. This is completely self-serving. Called Legends of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel. It's a super niche JRPG.
While Adam's words of "no one in the audience will know this song" is true now, perhaps if the Legend of Heroes franchise explodes in the near future, more people will recognize the game's bangers. Now that I told you the major reasons why I like this series, let's move on to why this game can break out. So the question I have is, how much longer will the series remain an underrated gem and niche JRPG before breaking out? My prediction, not much longer. Falcom president Toshihiro Kondo is serious about expanding the Legend of Heroes franchise overseas, and with Falcom switching publishers and pushing hard into the West, this franchise may be the next breakout JRPG series. The first two Trails games were localized by English publisher Xseed. The localization was so well done that when Falcom made the switch to the larger publisher NIS America for Trails 3, fans were angry and worried. Why is this? Because Xseed did a fantastic job with the English translations with the first two games, and fans were worried that NIS America might screw it up with the third Trails games because they had some subpar translations in their previous games. Fortunately, NIS America did a great job with Trails 3 and assumingly the upcoming Trails of Cold Steel 4. Now you may be asking, why did Falcom make the publisher switch? The reason came down to more exposure, as NIS America is a much larger publisher than Xseed Games. Falcom knew that when other franchises such as the Yakuza series recently exploded in the West, it was due to a large publisher in Sega and a solid English localization. Falcom hopes to match this type of success with the Trail series. So why am I backing this series so hard? For me, it comes down to its incredible world building and deep characters, and how the game makes every character, from the NPCs to the NPCs of those NPCs, so fleshed out. There's not many JRPGs that will make you care about so many characters outside of the main cast, but the Trails games actually do. The game's long continuous run that spans 10 games means that you'll grow alongside this world and its characters. Going just from the Trails games, you'll see how a bunch of high school students from Thor's Military Academy grow up throughout that series. You'll wonder what each main character and the NPCs are up to after graduation and how they pursue their own separate goals. The main 9 characters from Class 7 in Trails of Cold Steel 1, as well as the 5 main characters from the new Class 7 in Trails of Cold Steel 3, are fleshed out so well that you become invested in each person's story right away. Each character has their own elaborate background, their motives, and why they enrolled at Thor's Military Academy. I was always looking forward to the next Social Link event to learn more about each character. The way the characters talk and joke around with each other, there's very few JRPGs that have that great team chemistry like the Trails games do. The attachment to these characters is quite real, and you'll see that the developers really care about the series. Other aspects that make this series so good is the combat, which I didn't really get to touch on. In short, the game's combat has some strategic depth, with positioning, turn order, and area of effects being so essential and will remind older JRPGers of the Grandia series. And again, we do have to mention the music, as the Trails games has some serious bangers that fit each situation. For all the praise I have for this newfound series, I do think there are some weak points that if Nihon Falcom and Toshihiro Kondo don't take care of, it may keep the entire Legend of Heroes series back from reaching the top tier of JRPGs. At first glance, the graphics aren't the greatest, even for a PS3 and Vita game, the 2 platforms where the Trails games originally came out on. But a much bigger problem than the graphics is that the game has a smaller budget than some of the bigger JRPG giants. For one, there's a lot of missing dialogue. This leads to a lot of awkward moments where everyone in the scene is voiced except the main character Rin, so you often get situations like this.
Are you getting used to life at the academy yet? That's good to hear. By the way, tomorrow is another free day. Are you really willing to help out again, like Instructor Sarah said?
Now, these situations usually happen during story points, so when your main protagonist is mute during a lot of these situations, it really breaks the immersion, as you're left thinking, why is Rin mute while everyone else is talking? One explanation I do have is that they couldn't book Sean Chiplock enough, who played Rin's voice actor, to record his lines in time, leading to this situation quite often. But Falcom did actually see this, so in the Trails of Cold Steel 1 and 2 remakes in 2019, they did bring back Sean Chiplock to do a lot more of Rin's voiceovers. But as you move on to Trails 3 with the upgraded graphics to the PS4, it goes back to lacking Rin's voiceovers in a lot of the story events. Continuing with the lack of voiceovers, there's also a lack of singing during the actual singing parts in the game. There's this major event in Trails of Cold Steel 1 where you have a school concert with 3 songs. It's supposed to be very hyped, and you would think that since it's a concert, it would have singing. Yet when the concert's first 2 songs happen, there was actually no singing at all, just simple violin solos. And what made it even more strange was that no one was even playing the violin during those 2 songs. I know, it's really weird. Only the last song at the concert actually had someone singing in it. Now, I think a major reason why the game is suffering from the lack of voice acting as well as a lack of singing and other things audio related is because of the budget. Being a small company with little exposure outside of Japan, the company really didn't have the budget to pour into their game the way that, say, a Square Enix or Atlus and other AAA and mid-tier companies have. I think Falcom just pretty much said that, you know what, a lot of things are just going to be muted or not have vocals, and that's okay, and we're just going to double down on the character development and the world building and put any bells and whistles off to the side. The game also leans onto its unofficial Avengers, a JRPG title a lot. And hey, while I'm all about having a lot of fleshed out developed characters and NPCs, each game will introduce more main characters and NPCs while also bringing back recurring characters. And I know you can see the problem with this. Falcom most likely introduced a large cast for the fan service, yet it does make the story a lot more bloated, as up to 40 plus characters are all fighting for stage time. With that being said, the future of the Trails games and larger Legend of Heroes series is promising. The move to NIS America and the Trails games being re-released on the PS4 and PC, the series is experiencing a new surge of popularity. If the series continues to increase their sales, I'm sure Falcom could add the extra polish in voice acting, more cutscenes, and better presentations that the more established, well-funded JRPGs have. And with the news that the game is moving on from the outdated Fire engine after Hajimari no Kiseki, which is the 10th game in the series. Falcom's going to be adapting a new engine, which will revamp the game's graphics and UI. And from this, perhaps the series will have the graphics that can rival some of the top tier JRPGs. But currently, the Legend of Heroes series already has something going for it, namely some of the best world building and character development of any JRPG series already. So it will be exciting to see where Falcom takes the series in the future. So what did you think about this video? Have you played this game before? Have you not played this game before? Are you interested in the Trails games? I'd love to know your take in the comments below. And if you guys like what we do here on this channel, which is to talk mostly about East Asian gaming in depth, then we'd be honored if you hit the subscribe button. And until next time, I'll see you in the next video.